You thought it was curated chaos. You thought your obscure 2005 forum on rare Victorian porcelain was safe. You were wrong. In this file, we audit a crime scene, a silent deletion of human lived experience. Yahoo Groups wasn't just deleted, it was a containment failure of human history. Let me show you what that actually means. December 2019. A woman named Sarah receives an email. Subject line, important changes to Yahoo Groups. She almost deletes it as spam, but something makes her open it. Inside, a corporate announcement dressed in sterile language. Yahoo Groups will be shutting down. All content will be permanently deleted. She has 60 days. Sarah runs a support group for a rare genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. 15 years of posts, treatment logs, experimental therapy discussions, connections between patients scattered across continents. Thousands of messages documenting suffering, hope, and breakthrough moments. Medical information that doesn't exist anywhere else because pharmaceutical companies don't fund research for diseases affecting small populations. 60 days to save it all. She's not alone. Across the internet, millions of users receive identical messages. Genealogists who spent decades digitizing family histories. Hobbyists maintain the only comprehensive databases of discontinued model trains. Veterans discussing Agent Orange exposure in forums that their government pretended didn't exist. LGBTQ teenagers from the early 2000s who found community when their physical worlds offered none. All of it is scheduled for deletion. Here's what makes this different from your typical platform shutdown. Yahoo Groups wasn't some failing startup. This was infrastructure. 20 years of human conversation. Over 10 million groups. Conservative estimates put the total archive at 180 terabytes of data. That's not just numbers. That's your uncle's conspiracy theory forum. Your mom's book club is discussing novels that never made bestseller lists. Your own teenage angst preserved in a Harry Potter roleplay group. The emotional weight is immediate, but here's where it gets forensic. A group called the Archive team mobilizes. These are digital archaeologists, activists who've made it their mission to preserve internet history that corporations treat as disposable. They build custom scrapers, write code that can navigate Yahoo's labyrinthine group structures, recruit volunteers to manually download what automation can't reach. Jason Scott leads the effort. He's done this before. GeoCities, Mega Upload, countless smaller platforms. But Yahoo Groups is different. The scale is unprecedented. The timeline is impossible. They work in shifts, 24 hours a day, racing against corporate deletion schedules. The math is brutal. Even with hundreds of volunteers, even with optimized scraping tools, they're only capturing fragments. Every hour, groups vanish before they can be archived. We think we got about 18%, Jason says in a recorded interview months later. His voice carries a weight that numbers can't convey. We think, did they though? That pause, that doubt. It's the sound of knowing you've lost something you can't quantify. Meanwhile, Yahoo's corporate communications follow a predictable script. Generic statements about focusing on core products, assurances that users have ample time to download their data. What they don't mention is that Yahoo's own download tools are broken. They time out. They corrupt files. They generate incomplete exports that users can't actually access. This isn't negligence. This is optimized erasure. Leaked administrative logs suggest something darker. Internal discussions about sunsetting legacy infrastructure, cost-benefit analyses where human history is measured in server maintenance expenses. One memo refers to groups users as low-engagement legacy accounts. Translation: not worth keeping alive. Compare this to how museums operate. When a museum deaccessions an artifact, there's a process, documentation, attempts to transfer items to other institutions, public accountability. Yahoo Groups got a 60-day countdown and a broken export button. The deletion happens in waves. First, the ability to create new groups vanishes. Then, posting stops. Then, read access disappears. Finally, the data itself is purged from servers. Clean, efficient, irreversible. But here's what the corporate timeline doesn't capture. In those final weeks, something extraordinary happens. Communities that existed in isolation for decades suddenly discover each other. The Victorian porcelain collectors find the Antique Restoration Forum. The rare disease support groups coordinate with medical researchers trying to preserve patient data. Strangers become archivists. Archivists become activists. They're fighting a battle they know they can't win. The math has already been decided. Most of Yahoo Groups will die. But they fight anyway because the alternative is letting it happen in silence. And in that fight, something becomes clear. This isn't about data. It's about proof. Proof that we were here. Proof that our conversations mattered. Proof that the internet was once built by people who cared about things corporations will never understand. The deletion completes on schedule. Millions of groups vanish. The archive team saves what they can, which means they watch most of it disappear. What they saved sits on servers now. The archive teams haul 18%? Maybe. Compressed files that represent fragments of 2 decades. You can browse some of it. The Internet Archive hosts what they could salvage. But here's what browsing feels like. You search for your old group. The one about vintage synthesizers or chronic illness management or that role-playing game you ran for 4 years. Sometimes you find it. More often, you find a stub. Metadata without content. A gravestone with no body beneath. The rescued groups have a quality that's hard to describe. They're incomplete. Threads cut off mid-conversation. Attached photos that never made it into the scrape. User profiles reduced to names without context. It's like walking through Pompeii. You can see the shapes of life, but the life itself is ash. Some groups got lucky. Their moderators saw the warnings early. They organized manual downloads, migrated to new platforms, built their own archives. These communities survived, but they're different now. The casual members didn't make the jump. The lurkers who never posted but read everything. The people who'd show up once every 2 years with a specific question, gone. What you're left with is the core, the dedicated. It's more focused, maybe more efficient, but something about the ecology changed. Those peripheral members mattered in ways nobody understood until they vanished. Then there are the groups nobody saved, the ones with inactive moderators, the communities that had slowly died but left years of archives behind. The support groups where people posted once, got help, and never returned. These groups had no advocates. No one is fighting for their preservation. They just ceased. Medical forums are the gut punch. Rare disease communities where patients documented symptoms, treatments, and side effects. Data that never made it into formal medical literature because these conditions were too obscure, too poorly understood. Some researcher somewhere probably needed that information. Some newly diagnosed patient searching desperately for others like them. The data existed. Now it's a bit rotten. Genealogy groups hit different. Families who'd spent years collaborating on family trees, sharing documents, and scanning old photos. That grandfather's military service record someone finally tracked down. The census data that cracked a brick wall. The photo of great-great-grandmother nobody knew existed. Some of it was backed up. Most wasn't. The corporate logic is clean. Low engagement, legacy infrastructure, cost optimization. But here's what that logic can't compute. Value isn't engagement. A support group that saves one life with a single post has infinite value. A genealogy thread that connects someone to their history has infinite value. A hobbyist forum that helps some kid in 2008 learn electronics has infinite value. These things don't generate clicks. They don't scale. They don't produce data worth monetizing. By every metric corporations use, they're worthless. which tells you everything about those metrics. We're the last generation that remembers. The internet before it was 5 websites, before algorithmic feeds, before everything was platform, brand, and content. We remember when it was just people building things because they wanted to. No business model, no growth strategy, just humans connecting over shared interests that seemed too weird, too niche, too specific to matter. Yahoo Groups was ugly. The interface was clunky. The spam filters barely worked, but it was ours, built by us, for us. And now it's evidence that the internet we built can be erased with a corporate memo and a 60-day countdown. The graveyard is talking. It's saying that nothing digital is permanent unless someone fights to make it so. It's saying that corporations are not archivists. They're landlords. And when the rent stops making sense, they demolish without asking who lived there. It's saying that we're living through a mass extinction event, not of species, but of memory. The casual conversations, the niche expertise, the support networks, the proof that we were here, that we mattered, that we built something together. The final file is open. It's colder than I expected. Because what's inside isn't just data loss. It's the realization that everything we're building now on platforms we don't control is just as vulnerable. The Discord servers, the Facebook groups, the subreddits, all of it is sitting on corporate infrastructure that can vanish the moment the math stops working. We didn't just lose data. We lost the proof that we mattered, and the deletion is still happening, quietly, efficiently, right now. The file closes now, but the case doesn't. Because here's the truth they don't want you to see. Yahoo Groups was a test run, a proof of concept for how easily human memory can be erased when it's stored on someone else's servers. The infrastructure you're using right now, the communities you're building, the conversations you think are permanent, they're all sitting on the same fragile foundation. Your Discord server with 5 years of inside jokes. Your Facebook group is organizing mutual aid. Your Reddit community is archiving lost media. All of it exists at the mercy of quarterly earnings reports and infrastructure cost analyses. One memo, one pivot, one focusing on core products announcement, and it's gone. We are the last witnesses to what the internet was. A wild, chaotic human thing built by people who cared more about connection than monetization. The next generation won't remember. They'll inherit an internet that's 5 corporate platforms, algorithmic feeds, and content optimized for engagement metrics. They won't know what we lost because they never saw what we had. The activists saved 18%. Maybe. The rest is evidence that disappeared without trial, without appeal, without anyone being held accountable. Cultural heritage is measured in server costs and deleted because the math didn't justify its existence. We didn't just lose data, we lost the proof that we mattered. The graveyard is already talking. The final file is open, and it's colder than I expected.